Welcome back. Today we're looking at a really powerful piece, arguing that, well, a coordinated effort by media, schools, and parties is dehumanizing conservative voices, leading toward justifying violence, using the Charlie G. assassination as a key example. Let's jump straight into the critique. Okay, so first off, the historical context here is, wow, it's very effective. You've got these detailed descriptions, Nazism in 42, communism in 17, showing how propaganda was used to, eliminate the other. It's a chilling start.
Ah, okay. It really is chilling and strong. But I think there's an opportunity here to make that history do even more work for the argument. So the first critique is about strengthening the core mechanism. Basically, connecting those historical parallels more directly, more explicitly to the modern indoctrination you describe. Right now, you present these historical case studies, Nazism, communism, as these powerful, sort of separate analyses before you get into the modern mechanisms like media repetition, schools, party stuff.
Ah, okay.
And the risk there, the weakness, is that it misses a chance to use that historical framework right away, like an analytical lens for what's happening now.
I see. So, by keeping them separate, the reader has to kind of connect the dots themselves. They might think, oh, that history sounds similar, but they're not forced to see it as like the same operational steps being repeated.
Exactly that. If the argument is that this isn't just history rhyming, but that this dehumanization factory is running on the same blueprint, that link needs to be immediate, explicit.
Right.
The separation, well, it just dilutes that feeling of direct continuity.
Okay, so the suggestion then is to actually integrate the history into the analysis of the modern stuff. Take those historical elements you identify, animalization, caricature, repetition, manipulating history, and use those as the categories to analyze today's media and education?
Precisely. Think of it like this. Instead of saying, okay, here's what the Nazis did, here's what the communists did, and then starting a new section on modern media, you analyze the modern media through those historical categories. So take animalization, calling opponents vermin, parasites, whatever. You need a concrete example, showing exactly where today's rhetoric, maybe in a headline or a commentary, lines up perfectly with that specific historical step.
So you might start the discussion of the modern factory by asking, okay, where's the modern equivalent of animalization happening right now? And show an example. That forces the reader to see the direct parallel.
Yes, absolutely. Show the history as the manual, step by step, and then show how modern institutions are, maybe unconsciously, maybe not, following that manual chapter and verse. You could show how, say, changing historical figures in school curricula today is operationally the same kind of thing as the photo manipulation back in 1917. Make that synthesis sharp. It makes the whole argument much harder to just wave away.
That makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. There's this real high point rhetorically in the piece. It's powerful stuff, rejecting passivity, calling the listener to be the extremist they fear by defending family, faith, freedom radically.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic hook. It's got that necessary jolt, that shock value. But, and this is the tricky part, that transition, that specific call, it could potentially undermine the critique if we're not super clear about the boundaries.
I wonder, though, are we maybe softening it too much if we over-define it? Isn't that shock, that immediate, reclaiming of the enemy's label, isn't that the point, to feel that defiance?
That's a fair point, absolutely. And the rhetorical power is there. But look at how much effort the piece puts into condemning the actual harmful extremism, the kind that celebrates Charlie G's murder, right?
Right.
The weakness here is that the prescriptive extreme action, the one you want people to take, loving and defending values extremely, it's defined pretty vaguely. You mentioned following Christ's sacrifice or living coherently with values. It's a bit abstract. And when you use that same loaded word, extremist, for both the thing you're fighting against, the violent hatred, and the thing you're calling for, radical moral commitment, well, the lack of specifics could genuinely confuse people. They might not grasp the practical difference. That moment of sort of radicalization you're calling for is too vital to leave fuzzy.
So the reader's thinking, okay, I get it, defend values extremely, but what does that actually look like day to day? Is it arguing online? Is it building something? what is the action? We need to clarify the terms of engagement, maybe?
Hmm?
Okay, so the suggestion. Right after that rallying cry, dedicate a specific, really sharp segment to defining the rhetorical pivot, clarifying extreme values versus extremist violence. Define the mechanics, the boundaries of this good extreme. Show how it's a moral counterforce, but one that absolutely avoids the hatred and dehumanization the piece condemns.
Exactly. We need to ground this positive extremism in concrete actions, nonviolent, institutional, intellectual commitment. Let's make the examples really actionable. Define extreme action as, say, extreme intellectual courage.
Meaning,
Meaning, like relentlessly seeking out and confronting misinformation, maybe in public forums, but doing it with facts and moral clarity, not just raw emotion.
or maybe extreme moral consistency. That could mean persistent legal or legislative advocacy for people being targeted, building defensive systems, not just reacting, like a shield.
Yes, like a shield. And another powerful one could be extreme cultural perseverance. Actually building parallel institutions, schools, media, community groups that actively form character and teach values outside the systems you're critiquing. You mentioned Wilberforce, MLK Jr. Their commitment was extreme because they built lasting structures, right? Not because they just got angry.
Right, they built things.
These examples make it clear the extremism you want is about high discipline, intellectual, moral, not aggression.
That really helps, Abe. Grounds that provocative call in something constructive. Okay. Now, the third major area, the piece has this incredibly sharp focus on the institutional drivers, the concentrated power of the mainstream media, the ideological control in schools. That's clearly the core target.
And that focus is absolutely the strength. It's what makes the thesis stand out. But, for intellectual arguments, especially ones this charged, they gain a lot of robustness if they just briefly acknowledge and then maybe dismiss other potential causes. So this critique is about addressing potential gaps in attribution, basically avoiding the single cause fallacy. The weakness, structurally, is that it points almost exclusively to the centralized power, the left, great media parties, as the sole factory of doctrine. Just this one axis causing the dehumanization, and that creates a potential vulnerability.
Okay, but why is that a vulnerability if the evidence really does point mainly to those institutions as the ones driving the specific campaign? Why dilute it?
Because a skeptical reader, or even just a careful one, can immediately push back and say, well, hang on, polarization is complex. They'll point to other things, individual confirmation bias, right? Or social media algorithms feeding people hate from all directions, or just people choosing to live in echo chambers.
Ah, the other factors.
Yeah, if you don't at least nod to that complexity, someone might just dismiss the piece as being too simplistic, too one-sided.
I get it now. It's not about weakening the core argument. It's about protecting it. Show you see the bigger picture, but then firmly bring the focus back to the organized institutional threat you're exposing. Right. So the suggestion is, strategically, put in a brief, high-level acknowledgement. Say something like, look, we know polarization has many complex causes, but then immediately pivot back. Stress that the focus here is specifically on the organized institutional machinery of dehumanization. It shows you're aware, but keeps the thesis sharp.
Exactly. Let's make that concrete, maybe right near the beginning, after the intro, but before you really dive into the mechanics of the factory, just insert a sentence or two, acknowledge that yes, rancor, bias, general nastiness, it's widespread, it contributes to division. Then pivot hard. Stress that the specific issue being tackled here is not just general division, but the systematic, targeted attempt by powerful institutions, media, schools, parties, to normalize hate and justify violence against one particular group. That distinction between general societal messiness and targeted institutional programming needs to be crystal clear. It defends your argument against that oversimplification charge.
That feels much stronger. It shows you've considered other angles, but are deliberately focusing on the institutional signal within the noise. Yeah, that's a sophisticated tweak. Okay, that brings us towards the end of this critique. We've pinpointed 3 key areas, really, to make this already compelling material even stronger.
Right. First, rethinking how the history is used. not just as an analogy, but at integrating it directly as an analytical template. Show how things like animalization, caricature, repetition are playing out now, using history as the guide.
Second, that crucial rhetorical call, be the extremist they fear. It needs clear definition immediately after. Define that good extremism with concrete, actionable examples, like intellectual courage, moral consistency, building institutions, nonviolent, disciplined action.
And third, just briefly, fortifying the attribution. Acknowledge the complexity of polarization broadly, but then immediately double down on the core thesis. The focus is the organized institutional dehumanization being orchestrated by specific powerful systems.
These feel like high-level structural shifts. They don't change the core message, but they make the argument tighter, more robust, harder to dismiss.
Exactly. Implement these changes, and that powerful call to action becomes, I think, significantly more persuasive, more logical, and ultimately more effective for a wider audience. We definitely encourage you to work these suggestions in, and please submit the revised material. We'd be keen to see it again.